I gave a keynote speech for their board retreat recently, and came to learn that, okay, they have a budget of, roughly $3 million a year. This is just the state of Washington. They serve, I don't know, 6,000 kids with special needs. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if you could use the See Your Impact site and have each kid raise just half of the operating costs that it costs to support their activities for the year? Now, we're just now starting to have those discussions, but wouldn't it be cool if you got an email from a special needs child asking you to donate $5? How many of us could actually say no to that? I know I couldn't. Right? I would support their campaign. And so if each child participating in Special Olympics raised $300, they would actually come up with half of the cost to do so. The other interesting aspect of See Your Impact and the Parents Union, and this is very unusual in the nonprofit space, is that the business model for both of those leads to self-sustainability. Most nonprofits, you have to go back to your board or to large donors to write large checks every single year. The operating model for the Parents Union is $20 a year member dues. We can all afford $20 to belong to the Parents Union. At scale, that's what pays for the executive director and the small staff that we have. With See Your Impact, if you go to the site, and I would encourage every single one of you to go to the site. In fact, we have $25 gift cards that you can buy. Buy one, go to the site, use that gift card, make a donation, a bed net, a clean water kit, vitamin packs, you name it, a month's worth of education. Go to the site, use that card, and at the end of the at the checkout time, what we do is we ask you to voluntarily leave See Your Impact a tip, because we pass 100% of your gift on to the NGO that we're working with around the world. 100%. The tip is totally voluntary. So we've been operational now for just over a year. Of all the donors that come to the site, 80% of them leave us a tip. And that tip is averaging 14%. That's the self-sustaining nature of what we're doing. In conclusion, and this really is in conclusion, I want to leave you with these facts. Over 50% of the world's population is under the age of 30. 96% of millennials have joined a social network. It took radio 38 years to reach 50 million users. TV, it took 13 years. The internet, 4 years. The iPod, 3 years. Facebook added 200 million users in less than a year. iPod application downloads hit 1 billion in 9 months. There are over 200 million blogs. Nonprofits and for-profits, for that matter, had better embrace this new world. I thank you very much, and I'd be happy to take some questions. Anyone out there? Anything goes. Personal life, anything. Yeah.
Did you go to Franklin High School?
I did go to Franklin High School. Yeah, it's just it was a great time for me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I went with the bel cantos. I played in the jazz band, but my senior year we actually we did travel to Europe. Yeah, but I was playing the saxophone at the time, so but it was a great experience.
And following that up with another real question, I am excited to read your book about education and hearing you speak about the Parents Union. But did you ever read any of Thomas Sowell's works, Higher Education, Lower Standards, or did you ever meet with him?
No, no to both of those, and it's mostly because my focus really was on K-12. I am pretty aware of what's going on with higher education. I've been a regent for the University of Washington. I was the president of the Board of Regents for a year. I was pretty frustrated by that experience, quite honestly. In fact, when I was asked to re-up for another 6 years, I told Gary Locke, I said, no, I've had enough. I just couldn't do it. I'm too entrepreneurial. And you know, those of you who have served on, you know, various, you know, university boards, it's anything but entrepreneurial. Yes?
Have you ever faced any failure?
Have I faced failure? Oh yeah. Yeah, you know, often. You know, that's part of the definition of being an entrepreneur. You know, you acquire that scar tissue. You learn by doing. You know, you have to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and move on. You can't be afraid of failing. When you think about, you know, startups, you know, maybe 10% of startups never succeed. I actually think the percentage is even smaller than that. But one of the things that, one of the very important success factors in hindsight, when I think about the whole Microsoft thing, when I was founding the international division, every country we would go to, we'd set up a new subsidiary. And I was very intentional in the fact that, number one, I would not hire an expat American. Virtually every other company at the time was hiring Americans that they would simply relocate to France or Germany or someplace, Japan, to basically run the subsidiary. I was just the opposite. I would not hire an American to work overseas. And the reason was pretty simple. You know, what do they know about anything? They don't know really about the business customs. They don't have their networks in place, blah, blah, blah. And the other thing I insisted on was that every single person who reported to me had to have had startup experience. No exceptions. I didn't care whether it was successful or a failure. They had to have had startup experience. And it's that entrepreneurial spirit. It's being willing to work, you know, 24 hours a day for, you know, 3 days without any sleep. It's that attitude and mindset that I was looking for. And if you've never been through a startup, you really don't know what it's like. If you've only lived in the corporate world, okay, you're used to working 8-hour days, maybe at a stretch, maybe 10 or 12 hours. But honestly, it is very far away from being a real entrepreneur. And those things, I believe, led to why the international division for Microsoft was as successful as it was. Yes?
The cost of education today is increasing tremendously for college, university students. I think it's really a real burden that we put our children after graduation into $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 of debt. I wonder if you think that college education is the right answer for most people, and have you ever hired someone without a college education?
Okay, lots of questions there. Where do I start? Okay, the cost of an education. You know, we live in America. We're very capitalistic. I believe that higher ed ought to be capitalistic. And yet, we're just the opposite. If you think of private schools, you know, my two sons, one goes to Yale, one goes to Georgetown. You know, what we pay just for the tuition, I don't know what it is, $60,000 a year. I can remember a meeting with the president of Yale, and he said, you know, you think you're paying a lot of money, that actually doesn't pay for the cost of that education. At $60,000 a year, doesn't pay for the cost of my son's education. So, well, what's the number? And he said, well, the real number is $85,000. Okay. Now Yale has a multi-billion-dollar endowment, so you know they supplement the cost of the tuition. But he also said that Yale has also done some research. And they test, what level of tuition they could charge. The last test they did, Yale could fill every single seat in the incoming class by charging $250,000 a year. No problem. They could fill every single seat. I don't know why they don't do that. I guess because they have a large endowment. When you think about even the University of Washington, when I was a regent for the UW, I was a big fan of high tuition because at the time the tuition was ridiculously low. I was a fan of actually raising tuition to market rates, what the real cost of an education was. But then to complement that with high financial aid. So kids who actually needed the financial aid could actually get it. Okay? So I'm a high tuition, high financial aid kind of a guy. If my kids were going to the University of Washington, why should I only have to pay, whatever it is now? It's actually gone up a little bit. I can certainly afford to write the $60,000 check a year. Right? And if they use part of that to supplement some other child's education whose family couldn't afford what it costs, so be it. I'm perfectly happy doing that. But we don't. And most colleges and universities don't do that. We're getting closer. We're moving in the right direction. But we don't do that. There are many ills facing higher ed. I can give a whole nother speech on this. In fact, I'm going to be keynoting in about 3 months a group of regents, if you will, representing a lot of colleges across the country that they're holding their meeting here. So I'll go into that. Oh, you can attend that. Maybe you can attend that. I could go on forever on this topic, but I won't. Anything else before we break up? Yeah.
I wonder, since I do work for you,
Is that what you do?
what made you get into golf?
What made me get into golf? Well, that's an easy one. So shortly before I retired from Microsoft, I was in Phoenix, and we held a national sales meeting down there. And I gave everyone an afternoon off, and partly because I wanted to sit by the pool and just go to sleep. And I didn't care what anyone else did. Well, some of my VPs came up to me, they saw me there and said, "Hey Scott, come on, let's go play some golf." I said, "I don't play golf. I've never played golf." And they said, "Oh, come on, you can sleep any old time." And so I said, okay. So I went in, bought a dozen balls, had put my tennis shoes on. I think I actually had to buy a golf shirt. Rented some clubs. Went out and played golf. This was at the Phoenician. After 9 holes, I had lost all 12 balls. And went in and bought more. But I couldn't believe how difficult it was. To hit a stationary object. Now, you think about other sports like baseball. The ball is actually moving, and you have to hit a moving object. Golf, the ball just sits there. I couldn't believe how difficult it was to hit a stationary object. And that's when I got hooked. And so when I did retire, that's why I spent the first 6 weeks pounding thousands of golf balls and not getting any better. Yeah.
Speaking of golf, Franklin plays a lot of basketball.